March 12, 1888. A small fishing village on the Connecticut coast. 88 people are buried alive, not in graves, in a stone chamber, deep beneath a hillside. The snow above them is 50 feet deep. The wind is screaming loud enough to crack church bells 3 miles inland. And every single one of them, the fishermen, the farmers, the widows, the crying children, every one of them owes their life to a woman they used to laugh at. Her name was Adelaide Thornbury, Della to the 2 people who still loved her. 5 years earlier, the sea took her husband. It took both her sons on the same afternoon. 3 empty coffins on the hill above the harbor. And when the grief did not kill her, she did something the whole village could not forgive. She started to dig. For 5 long years, she dug. She hauled stone. She sold her wedding ring. She buried herself in the earth behind her house, while the minister stood in his pulpit and called her mad. While the neighbors pointed, while the children shouted names at her back. They called it her tomb. They laughed for 5 years. And then, on the night the storm came, every one of them was pounding on her door, begging the madwoman to let them in. This is her story. March 1883. Stonebrook, Connecticut. The village sat where the land met the sea in a rough handshake. 140 souls, 40 houses, 1 white church on the hill, a crooked harbor, where the fishing boats leaned into each other at low tide like old men sharing secrets. The morning Ezra Thornbury died was a good morning. That was the cruelest part. The sky was the color of washed linen. The wind was easy. Adelaide stood at the kitchen window watching her husband, and her 2 sons walked down to the dock. Ezra in his brown coat. Nathaniel, the older, in the blue one she had patched at the elbow 3 winters running. Josiah, still lean, still boyish at 22, carrying the oilskins slung over his shoulder like they weighed nothing. Nathaniel turned back once, waved. Adelaide waved back. She would think about that wave for the rest of her life. Behind her, in the wooden cradle by the stove, Cordelia made a small wet sound. 3 months old. Fists like pink knots. I still that milky newborn blue. Prudence came down the stairs in her nightdress, hair braided from sleep. Did they leave already? Just now. I wanted to give Nathaniel his lunch. He took the bread. I put cheese in it. He forgets the cheese. He didn't today. Adelaide dried her hands, turned, looked at her daughter-in-law, 23 years old, fair, tired, a little afraid of the baby still. A little afraid of everything the way young mothers are. Sit down, Prue. I'll make the tea. That was 10 o'clock. At noon, the wind changed. Adelaide was hanging laundry when she felt it. A cold breath crossing the back of her neck. She looked up. The sky in the west had gone the color of a bruise. Deep purple, green at the edges. She had lived by the sea for 49 years, and she had never seen a sky like that. Not in March. Not this fast. She dropped the sheet. Ran. Down through the garden. Past the salt-blackened fence. Down the path to the cliff where you could see the whole harbor spread out below like a map. She saw the boats. 3 of them. Ezra's the farthest out. Small as a splinter of wood against a sea that had gone from gray to black in the time it took her to run. She screamed. Of course she screamed. What else does a woman do when the sea is coming for the only 3 men she has left in the world? But the wind was already too loud. The wind was carrying her voice inland, and even if it had carried, even if Ezra had heard her, there was nothing he could have done. The squall was on them before the sail was down. She saw the mast tip. She saw the boat go sideways. She saw the second boat swing to try to reach the first, and she saw that boat go under too. The third made it back. The third was not Ezra's. They found Josiah's body on the 3rd day, a quarter mile down the coast, face down in the sand near the mouth of the little creek. His hands were still in his pockets. Adelaide would remember that detail. His hands in his pockets. Like a boy who had decided to lie down and take a nap in the wrong place. They never found Ezra. They never found Nathaniel. Reverend Caleb Merriweather buried 3 coffins on the hill above the harbor. 2 of them were empty. He stood in his black robes, with the March wind pulling at his sleeves, and he read the psalm about lying down in green pastures. Adelaide listened with a face that had turned to stone. Prudence wept. Cordelia slept. Adelaide stared at the sea, and somewhere behind the stone in her face, something began to move. Something she did not have a name for yet. At the graveside, Temperance Gale came to her. Temperance had been her closest friend since they were 12 years old. Red-headed then, gray at the temples now, wide kind face, hands that had held Adelaide's hand at 3 childbirths. Temperance and her husband had never had children. 2 miscarriages, then silence, then acceptance. She had poured all of that unspent mothering into the Thornbury boys, and now into Cordelia. Della. She put her arms around Adelaide. Della, my Della. Adelaide did not lift her arms. Temperance held her anyway. We are all here for you, Temperance said. Whatever you need. Adelaide looked at her. I need my husband. I need my sons. Temperance's mouth opened, closed. I know. Della, no. You don't. The 2 words came out quiet, almost gentle, but there was something in them that made Temperance step back half a step without meaning to. That was the first crack. That night, Adelaide sat on the edge of her bed, Cordelia in the cradle at her feet. She did not undress. She looked at Ezra's coat on the peg by the door. She had brushed it that morning. Habit. She stood, went to the coat, slid her fingers into the inside pocket the way she had done 1,000 times looking for the little clay pipe. There was no pipe. There was a folded square of paper. Nathaniel's handwriting. Rough, slanted. A pencil that had needed sharpening. Mother, if I do not come back from this trip, please tell Prue I meant to be a better husband than my time gave me. Tell Cora that her father promised to see her take her first steps. Tell her I meant it, even if I could not keep it. Your loving son, and Adelaide read it twice, 3 times. She sat down on the bed and held the paper against her chest and rocked, slowly, the way a mother rocks a sick child. There was no child in her arms. Only the paper, only her son's handwriting. Only words that would live inside her like a second heartbeat. I meant it, even if I could not keep it. She folded the paper, put it in the small wooden box on her dresser, where she kept her mother's brooch and Ezra's silver watch, and the lock of Josiah's baby hair. She would not tell Prudence. Prudence was young. Prudence had a baby to feed. If Adelaide put this paper in her hands, it would break her the rest of the way. Adelaide would carry it alone. She leaned over the cradle, put her finger against Cordelia's tiny curled hand. The baby's fingers closed around it in sleep. Adelaide whispered, "Nothing is going to take you." She said it again. Nothing. She said it a 3rd time because 3 was how you sealed a thing in the old fisherman families of that coast. Nothing is going to take you. That was the beginning. The digging started in September. Adelaide walked out behind the house one morning with a shovel over her shoulder and a coil of string in her hand. She was wearing her husband's old work boots. 2 pairs of wool socks stuffed in to make them fit. She measured out a rectangle, 20 paces by 14, drove wooden stakes at the corners, ran the string between them. Then she began to dig. By noon she had a trench along the north edge that reached her knee. By evening she had gone all the way around, and her hands were bleeding through her gloves, and her back was a solid ache from hips to shoulders. She sat down on the pile of dirt, looked at what she had done. It looked like a grave. That was what everyone would say later. But Adelaide, sitting on that pile of dirt in the September dusk, was not thinking of graves. She was thinking of walls. She was thinking of a chamber wide enough to hold the whole village. Stone the depth of a man's shoulder. Timbers set into rock. Doors no wind could open. A fire that could not go out. A place where Cordelia could stand in the dark, with her hand in her grandmother's hand, and nothing outside could reach her. She did not know the word for it yet. She would find the word later. Prudence came out at dusk. "Mother, what are you doing?" "Digging." "What are you digging?" "A cellar. We have a cellar. A bigger one." Prudence stood at the edge of the trench. She was wearing her indoor shoes. The mud had reached the leather. She did not seem to notice. "Mother, it's dark." "I know. The baby is crying." Adelaide stood. Slowly. Put the shovel over her shoulder. "Then let us go feed the baby." By the end of the 3rd week, the trench was over her head. The village noticed. Reverend Caleb Merriweather came to the house in the 3rd week of October. Gray afternoon. Wind out of the north. He wore his good coat and his black hat and carried a Bible under his arm the way a soldier carries a rifle. He was 35 years old. New to the village. Only 2 winters in Stonebrook. His sermons were long, his handshakes brief, his ambition wide enough to fill the whole church and want more room. He had come from a small college in Boston. He walked around to the back of the house without knocking at the front. Found Adelaide in a hole in the ground. She was 10 feet below the surface, standing on a pile of loose earth, hair tied back with a rag, face streaked with dirt. She looked up when his shadow fell across her. "Reverend, Mrs. Thornbury." Silence. "Would you come out, please? I would like to speak with you." "Speak. Face to face. Then come down." He looked at his coat, his good boots. The latter Adelaide had propped against the wall. He did not come down. "The village is talking." "I know. They are saying you have lost your reason." "I know that too. May I ask what you intend to build here?" "A shelter." "Against what?" Adelaide leaned on her shovel, looked up. The wind moved her hair against her cheek. "Against the next one." "The next what?" "The next storm." He adjusted his hat. "There have always been storms." "Yes. And people have always survived them." "Some people. Not all. The Lord provides." "The Lord took my husband and my sons." His mouth tightened. "The Lord's ways are not for us to question." "I am not questioning. I am digging." He stood a moment longer. She saw him take in the depth of the trench. The neat piles of soil, the wooden stakes. She saw his eyes travel to the rise behind the house, the flat, sheltered rise where a church could stand, and she saw the small flicker of something in his face that she did not have a name for yet either. "I will pray for you." "Don't." He blinked. "I beg your pardon? Don't pray for me. Pray for the ones who don't dig." He turned, walked away, his good boots leaving prints in the soft ground she would have to shovel over later. That Sunday, from the pulpit, he spoke about the widow. He did not name her. He did not need to. "There is a woman among us who has been visited by great sorrow. Instead of turning to the Lord, she has turned to the earth. She digs. She digs day and night. She digs a pit behind her own house and calls it a shelter. But I say to you, brothers and sisters, what she is truly digging is a tomb." He let the word sit there. Tomb. He said it 4 times before the sermon ended. By Monday morning, the whole village was saying it. By Wednesday, the children were saying it in the street. By Friday, when Adelaide walked into the general store to buy a new shovel, the shopkeeper's wife would not meet her eye. $2, the woman said. Voice flat. "Thank you, Ruth." Ruth flinched at her own name. Adelaide walked out past 2 men on the porch who stopped talking as she passed and started again the moment she was 10 feet down the road. She did not look back. She could feel every eye in Stonebrook on her back like small cold hands. Prudence tried that autumn. One night in November she sat down across from Adelaide at the kitchen table with her hands folded. "Mother." "Yes. I wrote to my sister in Philadelphia." Adelaide put down her spoon. "When?" "Last week." "What did you tell her?" "That I might come, with Cora, for a while." "Just until what, Prudence?" "Just until you are settled." "I am settled." "You are digging a hole in the ground, every day, from sun up until—" "I know when I dig, Prudence." "I am afraid," she whispered. Adelaide looked at her a long time. Of what? Of you. Adelaide reached across the table, put her rough hand over her daughter-in-law's soft small one. Then do not decide tonight. Prudence did not decide that night. She wrote her sister a second time, and did not send the letter. She put it in the drawer and went about the business of feeding the baby, and cooking the meals, and watching her mother-in-law disappear into the earth behind the house one shovel at a time. The winter came early. Digging paused when the ground froze. Adelaide hired a stonemason from 3 villages over, a man named Silas Barrow, an old friend of Ezra's. He did not know about the sermons and did not care when he was told. They hauled granite from the quarry down the coast, stacked it under a tarpaulin beside the trench, waited for spring. Silas asked her once in January, "Della, what are we building?" "A room, underground, big enough for the village." "The whole village?" "Yes, about 140 people." "I know." He drank his coffee, watched her over the rim of the cup. "May I ask why?" "Because next time the storm comes I want somewhere to put them." He nodded slowly. He was 60. He had known Ezra since they were boys. "All right, Della." That first winter they hauled stone. Cordelia turned 1 year old on a snowy day in December. Prudence baked a small cake. Adelaide came in with snow in her hair, held her granddaughter on her lap, while Prudence lit a single candle. Cordelia looked at the candle, reached for it. Prudence laughed. No, hot." Cordelia looked at Adelaide. Adelaide looked at Cordelia, and in the yellow candlelight, with the wind pushing at the windows, Adelaide felt something move inside her chest that she had not felt in 9 months. Not happiness, closer to fierceness. "You will live to be an old woman," she thought at her granddaughter. "You will live to bury me, never the other way around." Cordelia patted her grandmother's face with one small sticky hand. Adelaide kissed the palm of it. That night, Prudence took the second unsent letter from the drawer, held it over the candle, watched the corner catch and curl and blacken until the whole page was ash. She did not tell Adelaide. Adelaide did not need to be told. The spring of 1885 was wet. The digging resumed in April. By June the pit was 15 feet deep and 30 feet across. By August the north wall stood chest high. People came in 2s and 3s to look, pretended to walk the coast path, stopped at the fence, then went back to the village and told what they had seen. A room, under the ground, big enough for the whole church congregation. The number grew in the telling. 200, 3, 5. Reverend Merriweather heard the stories, wrote them down, kept notes in the top drawer of his desk. He was, in his own careful way, beginning to build something too. Cordelia was almost 2 when she said her first clear word. May of 1885. Adelaide came in filthy and exhausted, washed her hands 3 times before she picked up the child. Prudence was at the stove stirring beans. Cordelia sat on the kitchen floor banging a wooden spoon against a tin cup. She looked up, saw Adelaide, dropped the spoon, crawled across the floor to Adelaide's feet, and pulled herself up on Adelaide's skirt, and looked up with her mouth open and her small perfect teeth showing. "Bah!" Prudence turned. "Cora?" Cordelia did not look at her mother. "Bah, bah." Adelaide bent down, very slowly, like a woman not sure she was allowed to touch what she was about to touch. "What did you say, my love?" "Bah, bah." Cordelia patted Adelaide's dirty skirt. "Bah, bah, bah." Prudence stood very still, wooden spoon in her hand, beans forgotten. "She's saying grandmother. Della. She's saying it to you." Adelaide picked her granddaughter up, held her against her shoulder, pressed her face into the child's soft warm neck, and she almost cried. Almost. Not quite. She pulled back before the tear could fall, kissed Cordelia on the top of the head, said, into the child's soft hair, "Yes, Ba. That is your Ba. That is your Ba forever." Cordelia laughed, the laugh of a child who has just made a discovery. so pleasing she cannot contain it. By late summer of 1885, 23 names sat on a piece of paper in the top drawer of the town clerk's desk. Petition, requesting that the selectmen convene a hearing to determine whether the widow Adelaide Thornbury was of sound enough mind to retain custody of Cordelia. The petition arrived at her door on a Thursday morning in November, in the hands of a young man named Obadiah Fisk, 18 years old. Adam's apple, boots too big. Adelaide read it standing on her own porch. She read it twice, folded it. Take this back to whoever wrote it. Tell them I have received it. Mum, I was told to leave it. Then leave it. She dropped it on the porch boards, turned, walked into the house, shut the door. Prudence stood in the kitchen with Cora on her hip. Mother. What did it say? Nothing worth saying. Mother. Adelaide poured a cup of coffee. Her hands were shaking. She noticed. Set the cup down. They want a hearing. About whether I am fit to keep her. Prudence made a small bitten-off sound. Cora, sensing something, twisted her face and cried. Prudence bounced her. Automatic. Eyes on Adelaide. They can't. They can call the hearing. Whether they can do more is another question. Later, when Adelaide had gone out to the shed, Prudence picked up the paper from the porch. Brought it inside. Read it at the kitchen table. 23 names. Some she had expected. Ruth Ashby, Deacon Pruitt, the Fry brothers. 2 she had not. Temperance Gale. And below Temperance's name in a hand Prudence knew, as well as her own Prudence Thornbury. She stared. Her own name, on a paper asking the town to take her daughter away from her mother-in-law. Except she had not signed it. Except, 2 weeks earlier, Temperance had come to the door with biscuits, sat at the kitchen table, held Cora on her lap, talked about the weather and the price of flour. Near the end of the visit had put a paper on the table. Just a note to the town clerk, confirming your permanent address here. For the census, Prudence had signed, because Temperance was her mother-in-law's oldest friend. Because Temperance had held her hand at the funerals. Because when you are 25, and widowed and terrified, you do not read a paper a warm-faced woman slides across your kitchen table. Something inside Prudence went very cold, then very hot, then very cold again. She stood, put on her coat, wrapped Cora in the blue blanket. Mother, I am going out. Adelaide looked up from the stove. Where? To see Temperance. Prudence. I will be back before dark. Prudence walked the half-mile in 20 minutes. Did not knock. Opened the door. Temperance was at her spinning wheel by the fire. Looked up. Saw Prudence. Saw Cora. Saw the paper. Her face did a small terrible thing. A flicker. A wince. A composing. Prudence, dear. Do not. Please sit down. I will stand. Temperance stood too. You need to understand. You put my name on this. For your protection. My name. Della is not well. Anyone can see it. You put my name on a paper to take my daughter. To save your daughter. Prudence held up the petition. From what? From that hole she is digging in the yard. Temperance's voice cracked. She spends every hour of daylight in the earth. And that baby is being raised in a house where the grandmother speaks to the dirt and the mother sleepwalks through the days. Prudence, my love, I am trying to help you. By lying to me. By loving you. Prudence stared at her. At this woman who had held her hand at 3 graves. At this woman who had rocked Cora to sleep in this very chair. Prudence understood, suddenly and completely, that Temperance believed every word she was saying. That was worse. A liar you can hate cleanly. A friend who is certain she is saving you, that you have to hate with your whole heart, and know you are wrong to hate at all. Take my name off it. I cannot. It has been filed. Then withdraw it. Prudence. Temperance. If they take Cora from us. If a single hand of the town touches my daughter, because of this paper, I will never speak your name again. I will walk past you in the street, until one of us is in the ground. and I will teach my daughter to do the same. Do you understand what I am telling you? Temperance's eyes filled. You do not mean that. Try me. Cora patted Prudence's cheek. Small hand. Warm. Prudence did not look at her. Withdraw it, Temperance. I will try. Try harder than you have ever tried. Prudence turned. Walked out. Did not close the door behind her. Let the November wind blow in. Let it be Temperance's problem. That night, Adelaide sat at her kitchen table, with Cora on her lap. She looked into that small face, the face that had Nathaniel's chin, and Josiah's dimple, and Ezra's gray eyes, and she said, so quietly that Prudence at the stove had to strain to hear, "They think they can take you from me." Cora blinked up at her. "Ba?" "Yes, my love. Ba is telling you now. Nobody is taking you. Not the Reverend. Not the town. Not the sea. Not the winter." She held her granddaughter tighter, looked through the window at the trench in the yard, at the stone piled beside it. "I am building you a place. I am building you a place they cannot reach." At the stove, Prudence set down the wooden spoon very quietly, pressed the back of her hand against her mouth. She understood, really understood, for the first time, what her mother-in-law was doing in the ground. It was not madness. It had never been madness. It was love. Love with a shovel in its hands. Love with stone in its arms. The fiercest thing Prudence had ever seen. The hearing was held on the second Tuesday of December, in the meeting hall behind the church. Adelaide wore her black funeral dress. Prudence wore her mother-in-law's brooch pinned at her throat. Cora stayed home, with a neighbor girl paid $2 to sit by the fire. Silas Barrow walked with them into the hall. He did not have to. He did anyway. Wore his good coat, which was not very good, and his good hat, which was worse, and sat in the front row on Adelaide's left, with his hands folded on his knees like a man daring anyone to say a word against the widow, within his hearing. 12 men on the panel. Reverend Merriweather sat at the end, not on the panel but close enough, watching, his notebook on his lap. The town clerk read the petition aloud. Adelaide sat still, hands folded, eyes on the wall. The clerk finished. The chairman cleared his throat. "Mrs. Thornbury, would you care to respond?" Adelaide stood up, slowly. 51 years old that winter. She looked older. She looked younger. She looked like a woman who had made up her mind long before she walked into that room. "I have 3 things to say." The panel waited. The first, my granddaughter is fed. She is clothed. She is warm. She sleeps in a cradle her grandfather built. She is loved by her mother, and by me. If any man on this panel has a report otherwise, produce it now. Silence. The second, I am building a shelter behind my house. I intend to finish it. When it is finished, it will hold every soul in this village. Every soul, including every man in this room, and every child of every man in this room. When the next storm comes, and it is coming, that shelter will be open. I will not turn one of you away. Not one. Not even the ones whose names are on that paper. The Reverend's pen stopped moving. The third. She looked at the panel now. For the first time, her eyes moved from face to face. Slowly, she skipped no one. If any of you takes that child from her mother, I will burn the shelter down before the winter comes. I will burn the stone. I will burn the beams. I will stand in the ashes, and I will watch the next storm come, and I will do nothing. Nothing. Every death that follows will be on the head of the man who signed the paper that took my granddaughter from her home. Silence. Deep. The wood stove ticking at the back of the hall. The chairman coughed. "Mrs. Thornbury, that is a threat, ma'am. That is a promise. You would let people die. I would let you let people die. There is a difference. Take my granddaughter and see." She sat down, folded her hands. The panel adjourned to the back room. They were gone 11 minutes. They came back. The chairman would not meet her eye. "The petition is dismissed, for lack of demonstrated cause." Adelaide nodded once, stood, walked out. At the door she turned, looked at the Reverend. He was still sitting in his chair, notebook closed, face expressionless. She said nothing. She did not need to. Her eyes said it. I know it was you. And now you know that I know. That night, she sat at her kitchen table, with the petition in her hand, and she read the 23 names. Slowly, every one. She would remember every one of those names for the rest of her life. Some of them she would forgive. Some of them she would not. The spring of 1886 came slow. Digging resumed in April. Cora turned 3. She began to help. She would waddle out into the yard in her small boots and pick up small stones and carry them 2 at a time to the pile beside the trench. She would say, very seriously, Cora's stone. Set the stones down. Go back for more. Adelaide picked out each one Cora brought her. Set them into the lintel above the inner door. Every one. None of them were structural. All of them were decoration. But every stone Cora Thornbury had ever carried was mortared into that shelter. And if you looked at the inner door frame you could see them, small and rough and set at odd angles, like a strange child's alphabet running along the top of the arch. That is Cora's stone, Adelaide would say when the child asked. And that one. All of these are yours. Cora would beam. Silas would look up from his mortar and shake his head and smile at the ground. The money ran out in June. Adelaide had known it was coming. She had budgeted every dollar. She had watched the account at the bank dwindle for 2 years, and she had known from March that by summer there would be nothing left except the house itself. She sold her wedding ring in the 2nd week of June. Rode the wagon to New Haven, alone. Took the ring off in the jeweler's shop. Set it on the black velvet cloth. Watched the jeweler weigh it. Took the money. Rode home. She never told Prudence. Prudence noticed anyway. The pale strip of skin on Adelaide's 4th finger, where the ring had been for 29 years. Prudence did not say a word. Prudence went out the next morning to Ruth Ashby's kitchen and asked in a very quiet voice whether Mrs. Ashby had any laundry she needed done. Ruth Ashby was one of the 23 names. Ruth Ashby said, without looking up, from her rolling pin, $2 a load. Pick up Mondays. Return Fridays. Yes, ma'am. Prudence walked home with the first basket on her hip. She did not tell Adelaide. Adelaide noticed anyway. The red hands, the chapped knuckles. They understood each other now, in a way that did not need words. They were building the same thing. Prudence with her laundry basket, Adelaide with her shovel. They were both building a place where Cora would live. Cora fell sick in October of 1886. 3.5 years old. She woke on a Thursday morning with a fever. By Thursday night she could not keep water down. By Friday morning her small body was hot enough to burn Adelaide's palm. Through the nightdress. Dr. Ambrose Kettleworth came at noon. Sinman. Gray-bearded. 60 years old. He rode a circuit through 4 villages. He examined Cora. Listened to her chest. Looked at her tongue. Scarlet fever. Prudence sat down hard on the kitchen chair. Adelaide asked, "What do we do?" "Keep her cool. Sponge her. Get water in her any way you can. And there is a preparation from Boston. Dr. Thackeray's restorative. Not a miracle, but I have seen it help." "How much?" $6. Prudence made a small sound. "Order it," Adelaide said. "Mrs. Thornbury." "Order it, doctor." "You have the money? I will have it by tomorrow." He left. Prudence sat with her face in her hands. "Mother, we do not have $6. We do not have $1. I know. The ring is all ready. I know." Adelaide stood at the window, looking at the walls of the shelter, chest high now, rising out of the ground. "I could sell the stone. I could stop building." Cora coughed in the next room. Small. Vet. Painful. Adelaide turned from the window. "I will go to the Reverend." "Mother." "No. I will." "He will use it against you." "I do not care." "Mother, please." "She is 3 years old." That stopped Prudence. Adelaide put on her coat. Walked the mile to the parsonage in the October dusk. Knocked. Reverend Merriweather opened the door. Saw her. Did not smile. Stepped aside. Mrs. Thornbury. Come in. I will stand. She stood in his front room. Small. Neat. My granddaughter has scarlet fever. I am very sorry. Dr. Kettleworth has ordered a medicine. $6. I see. I am asking the church for the money. He looked at her a long moment. Mrs. Thornbury, the church has funds for the poor. You are not among our poor. I am asking anyway. You are asking me to give $6 to a woman who has spent every dollar her husband left her on a project the entire congregation considers a scandal. Yes. And on the strength of what am I to justify this? On the strength of a sick child. There are many sick children in this parish. We do not, as a rule, purchase Boston medicines for them. Then make an exception. I cannot. You will not. I will not. Silence. Her hands, at her sides, had made themselves into fists. She unmade them, turned to the door. At the door she stopped. Reverend. Yes. You will remember this conversation. Will I? You will remember it very clearly. On a day I will name and you will not expect. You will stand somewhere and you will need something from me. And I will decide in that moment whether the $6 you refused me tonight was worth what it cost you. Mrs. Thornbury, that is. Good evening, Reverend. She walked out, crossed her own yard in the dark. A figure stepped from the shadow of the shed. Adelaide stopped, reached for the shovel leaning against the fence. Who is there? Della. Familiar. Lo, it's me. Temperance Gale stepped into the moonlight, bareheaded. No coat. She must have run. Adelaide let go of the shovel. Temperance held out a small cloth bag. Take it. What is it? $6. How did you know? The doctor stopped for tea at my cousin's. He mentioned the medicine. He mentioned the price. I put it together. Temperance. Take it, Della. Please. I do not want your. It is not my money. It is your money. I owe you this and more. Take it. Adelaide took the bag. Her hands were shaking. Temperance's eyes were wet in the moonlight. I am so sorry, Della. For what? For all of it. For the paper. For everything. Adelaide looked at her. At the woman she had loved since they were 12. At the woman who had signed the paper. At the woman who had run through the October dark without a coat because a child was sick. She could not forgive her. Not yet. Maybe not for years. But she said, Thank you, Temperance. Della. Go home. Your cough will come back. Temperance nodded, turned, ran back down the road. At the bend she looked over her shoulder once. Adelaide raised her hand. Small. But she raised it. Temperance saw. Went on. The medicine came on Monday. Cora took it Monday night. By Wednesday her fever had broken. By Friday she was sitting up asking for bread. The village did not know about the $6. The story that went around Stonebrook was that Adelaide had almost killed Cora with neglect. That the child had lain untended while the grandmother dug in the yard. That only the mother's frantic care had pulled the girl through. Ruth Ashby told it that way. Deacon Pruitt told it that way. The Reverend from the pulpit told it that way, not naming names but making the shape of the story clear. Prudence heard it at Ruth Ashby's kitchen door on Monday morning. She listened. She did not say a word. Took the basket. Walked home. She did not tell Adelaide. Adelaide did not need to be told. Prudence met Elias Frostwood in April of 1887. Widower. 2 years widowed. 31 years old. A woodworker from Old Saybrook, who came to Stonebrook once a month to buy oak from the mill. He came into Ruth Ashby's store while Prudence was picking up flour, held the door for her when she went out. He walked to the mill 3 days later and, on the way back, took the long road past the Thornbury property, and he saw Prudence hanging laundry in the yard, and he took off his hat. She saw him, did not wave, but she watched him walk on down the road. He came back the next month. Came again the month after. By August he was calling on her openly, sitting on the front porch with her while Cora played at their feet. Talking, in his slow, careful way, about weather and wood, and the 2 children he had lost in the diphtheria along with his wife. Prudence listened. Prudence talked sometimes. She did not smile often. But when she smiled at Elias Frostwood, the corners of her mouth went up in a way Adelaide had not seen since before Nathaniel died. Adelaide watched from the kitchen window, said nothing. Silas Barrow saw them once, and came over to Adelaide at the window. "That is a good man, Della. I know. She could go with him. I know. Would you let her?" Adelaide was quiet a long time. "Yes. And Cora?" Adelaide did not answer. Silas did not ask again. Elias came for supper in September, ate slowly, praised the bread, praised Cora, who by that point had climbed into his lap, and was showing him the wooden horse Silas had carved for her. After supper he asked to speak with Adelaide alone. They walked out to the yard, stood by the trench that was now nearly the finished shelter. "Mrs. Thornbury, I am not going to ask her yet. She is not ready. I am not ready either. But when we are both ready, I would like your blessing to ask." Adelaide looked at him, at his careful eyes, at his big careful hands, at the hat he held in both of them. "You have it. You would give it that easily. I have been watching you for 4 months. I do not give it easily. I give it because I have watched." He nodded slowly. "Thank you. She may say no." He smiled. "Small. Then I will wait." "How long?" "As long as she needs." Adelaide almost smiled back. She put her hand on his arm. Briefly, she was not a woman who touched people. "You are a good man, Mr. Frostwood." "I try to be, ma'am." He left an hour later. Prudence stood on the porch with Cora in her arms and watched him go until he was out of sight. Adelaide stood in the doorway behind her. Neither of them spoke. Elias Frostwood died in the 3rd week of November of 1887. He had come to Stonebrook that Monday for the Oak Run, slept the night at the boarding house, coughed harder Tuesday, was too weak Wednesday to leave the bed. Dr. Kettleworth was sent for, said the words lung fever very quietly. By Friday morning Elias was gone. He died with his hand in Prudence's hand. Once, in the middle of the night, he had opened his eyes and said, "I am sorry." She had said, "Don't. For not being ready sooner. Don't. Elias, don't." He had closed his eyes. He had died at 7 in the morning, as the first light came through the yellow curtains. Prudence walked home in the cold, with Adelaide beside her. She did not weep on the road. She wept when she got home. Adelaide sat with her on the parlor floor and held her clumsily, held her with the arms of a woman who had spent 5 years lifting stones and had forgotten how to lift a person. But she held her. Prudence discovered she was pregnant 3 weeks later. Tuesday morning, making coffee. The smell turned her stomach. She ran outside, was sick in the snow behind the house, stood up, wiped her mouth, stood there in the cold, with her hand against her stomach, and understood what her body was telling her. She walked back into the kitchen, sat at the table. Adelaide came in from the yard, snow on her boots, saw Prudence's face, sat down across from her. Prudence said nothing. "I know." "How?" "Because your face this morning is exactly the face I made the first time I understood I was carrying Nathaniel." "What do I do?" "You have the baby." "Mother, you have the baby, Prudence." "They will. Let them. Cora will. Cora will have a brother or sister and a mother and a grandmother and a house, which is more than most children in Stonebrook." Adelaide reached across the table, took her hand. "This is not your shame. This is your husband's child. Your true husband. The one you were going to have. The one God took from you before the wedding. But the child is still the child. The child is a Frostwood, and a Frostwood is welcome in this house." Prudence broke. She had not broken when Elias died. She had not broken at the funeral. She broke now, with her hand in Adelaide's rough hand, and the coffee still smelling on the stove. She wept for 20 minutes. Adelaide let her. When Prudence was done, Adelaide poured her a cup of cold water, made her drink it. We will not tell anyone until spring. Then we will tell everyone. And we will not lower our eyes at anyone who has a word to say. Mother. Yes. Thank you. Adelaide squeezed her hand, went back out to finish the roof beams. The winter of 1887 to 1888 was mild. Everyone in Stonebrook said so. The mildest winter anyone could remember. One small blow in January. A dusting of snow in February. Nothing else. By early March the crocuses were up. People were talking about early planting. And the whole village was laughing. Laughing at the widow Thornbury. 5 years. 5 years of digging. And no storm. Adelaide heard it all. She went into her finished shelter on the night of March 10, 1888. Alone.
Lit à lampe.
Walked along the wall. Ran her hand over the stones. Over the beams. Over the little rough set of stones Cora had brought her. She sat down on one of the wooden benches. 88 sleeping spaces. She had counted them. Blankets folded on shelves. Barrels of water along the far wall. Crates of dried food. Firewood stacked in the alcove. For 88 people. Not one of whom, tonight, believed she was anything but a mad old woman who had wasted her husband's savings on a hole in the ground. She put her face in her hands, said aloud to no one, "Am I mad?" Nobody answered. Small footsteps at the door. Cora in her nightdress, barefoot, 5 years old, hair down her back. Bah! Adelaide sat up. Cora, baby, it is cold. Cora walked across the stone floor, climbed up on the bench, fitted herself against her grandmother's side, put her small hand on Adelaide's arm. Bah, your room is nice. Adelaide could not speak. It is warm. Yes, my love. I like to sleep here with you. Something inside Adelaide, some door that had been held shut for 5 years, opened. She lowered her face into her granddaughter's hair, and she cried, without sound, because Adelaide Thornbury did not know how to cry with sound. But she cried, for her sons, for her husband, for the 5 years, for the ring and the money and the village and the friends who had turned away. Cora patted her arm. Don't cry, Bah. I am not, my love. You are. A little. Why? Because I love you. Oh. Cora accepted this, fitted herself closer. Adelaide kissed the top of her granddaughter's head, carried her back to the house. The snow began at 10 o'clock the next night. Adelaide at the kitchen window. Prudence mending a shirt by the fire. Small at first. Almost pretty. The kind of late winter snow that lasts one night. Prudence looked up. Oh look, a last one. Adelaide did not answer. She was watching the way the flakes were coming down. Not falling. Slanting. At an angle. The wind moving them east to west, and then, as she watched, west to east. The temperature dropping, so fast she could feel it in the glass under her fingers. Her mouth went dry. The old feeling. The feeling she had felt the morning Ezra sailed out. Only bigger. Only worse. Only faster. She turned. Prudence. Get Cora up. Prudence looked up. What? Get Cora up. Wrap her in the blue blanket. Boots. Coat. Now. Mother. Now, Prudence. Prudence saw Adelaide's face. Did not ask again. Dropped the shirt. Ran up the stairs. Adelaide stood at the window one more moment. Said quietly to the glass, You are late. You are 5 years late. But you are here. She grabbed the lamp. Ran for the back door. Ran for the shelter. Prudence came down with Cora in her arms, half asleep, hair sticking up, blue blanket trailing. They went out into the yard. The wind hit them like a wall. Adelaide got the shelter door open, held it against the wind. Prudence went down with Cora. Adelaide followed, pulled the door shut, dropped the bar, set the lamp on the shelf. Inside, silence. Warm, sudden silence. Cora blinked awake. Bah? Are we sleeping here tonight? Adelaide put her hand on Cora's cheek. Yes, my love. Good. Cora put her head down on her mother's shoulder. Closed her eyes. Adelaide climbed the stairs to the outer door. Put her hand on the wood. Listened. Above them, the wind was rising to a scream. Above them, the snow was already beginning to bury the world. Above them, in 87 houses spread across Stonebrook, 87 families were sitting down to supper, or banking their fires, or laughing at the last small snow of a mild winter, and not one of them yet knew that, within 12 hours they would be running, staggering, crawling through drifts up to their chests, toward a door in a hillside they had spent 5 years calling a tomb. Adelaide stood at the door, her hand on the wood, her ear against the wind. She said very quietly to the storm, "Come on then. I have been waiting for you." The first knock came at 4 in the morning. Adelaide had not slept. She was sitting on the bench nearest the door, with the lamp turned low. Prudence asleep on the pallet, with Cora curled against her, thumb in her mouth. The fire had burned down to red coals. Above them the storm was a living thing. Not wind anymore. Something bigger than wind. It sounded like a train that would not pass. Like 100 mouths. Like the sea itself had been picked up and thrown against the roof of the world. The stone walls held. The beams held. She had built for this. She had not known she was building for this. But she had. The knock came. 3 times. Weak. She was on her feet before the third knock finished. "Stay there," she said to Prudence, who had opened her eyes. Up the stairs. 2 flights, sloped so drifts could not seal the door from above. She reached the top, lifted the bar. The wind almost tore the door out of her hand. Snow flew in, stinging, horizontal. 3 shapes on the threshold. Wrapped, white, barely upright. The tallest said something she could not hear. She pulled them in. 1, 2, 3. Shut the door. Dropped the bar. Down the stairs. Into the light. The Peterson family. Their house half a mile away. Roof had started to give. They had run. The boy could not feel his feet. Prudence was already up. Blankets. Kettle on the coals. She had the boy's boots off before he had stopped shaking. Adelaide climbed the stairs again. Waited. The second knock came at 5. The Henderson family. 6 of them. The grandmother had to be carried the last 100 yards. Silas Barrow arrived at 5:30. He had walked from his cottage on the ridge in the worst blizzard he had ever seen. He had said one word to his wife when the wind hit Della and put on his coat and gone. "Silas, where do you want me?" "Upstairs. At the door. With me." By 6, 12 people. By 7, 20. By 9, 40. They came in families. They came alone. They came white-faced and shaking, and some of them wept the moment they were through the door. Everyone said the same thing. "Della. Mrs. Thornbury."
Mom.
"Please." She said the same thing back.
Come in.
"Go down." Warm. She did not ask a single one if they had signed the paper. She did not ask a single one if they had laughed. Their faces asked it for them. The Marshall family came at 10. 8 of them, 2 of the children unconscious. The Cooper family at 11. 5. Ruth Ashby at noon. Alone. Ruth Ashby, who had refused to meet Adelaide's eye at the counter of her own store. Ruth Ashby, whose name was the second signature on the petition. Ruth Ashby, whose husband had died in the collapse of their storeroom 2 hours earlier, and who had walked a mile, through drifts up to her waist, with her husband's blood still on her sleeve. She fell to her knees in the vestibule. "Della." "Get up, Ruth." "Della, please, Get up. Get down the stairs. There is soup." Ruth got up, went down, did not look back. Adelaide stood at the door, wiped snow from her face with the back of her hand. Silas beside her, silent. "Silas, how many do you count?" 51 now, with Ruth. She nodded again, kept her face toward the storm, because she did not want him to see it. Temperance Gale came at 1 in the afternoon, leading for children. Not her children, the Pruitt grandchildren. Deacon Pruitt had died in the night. His wife had died at dawn. The 4 children, oldest 10, youngest 3, had been alone in the house with the 2 bodies until Temperance had waded, through the storm, from her own place and found them. She had roped them together with a length of clothesline, tied the smallest to her waist, walked them 1.5 miles, through a storm no woman her age should have been able to walk through. She reached the door. Adelaide opened it, saw Temperance, saw the 4 children, saw the clothesline. Temperance dropped to her knees in the snow. Dilla, I am not asking for me. I am asking for them. Adelaide bent down, put her hands on Temperance's shoulders, lifted her to her feet. You do not have to ask. Dilla. You do not have to ask, Temperance. You never did. Temperance broke. Right there on the threshold, in the wind, with the 4 Pruitt children shivering behind her. Adelaide did not let her fall. She held her upright with one arm and reached with the other for the smallest child, and lifted him into her chest and carried him down the stairs herself. Temperance and the other 3 followed. Silas closed the door. He looked at Adelaide's back as she went down the stairs. His eyes were wet. By the end of the first day, 60 people. By the middle of the second, 78. The air was warm. The lamps burned steady. The stove was fed all day. The ventilation shafts pulled clean air down from above. But the space was crowded. Bodies against bodies. Children on laps. Old people on the benches Adelaide had built. Blankets shared. Whispers instead of talk. The smell of wet wool, and coffee and small stove smoke, and the strange animal warmth of many living things breathing in one room. Cora moved among them, 5 years old. She had a small basket of biscuits Prudence had baked the week before. She went from person to person, held out the basket. For you, for you, for the baby. The Marshall family's 2 smallest took biscuits from her small hand and looked at her the way you look at a person who has just saved your life. Their mother watched. She had been one of the loudest in the store the day of the sermon about the tomb. She watched her children take bread from the child of the woman she had called mad, put her face in her hands, did not lift it for a long time. Adelaide saw. She said nothing. She went back up the stairs. The knock came at 8 that evening, so soft she almost missed it. She was already opening the door. On the threshold, alone, no coat, only a small brown shawl wrapped around a small brown head, stood a girl of maybe 6 years old. Barefoot. Her small feet had gone the color of raw meat. Adelaide picked the child up, turned, ran down the stairs shouting for Prudence, for a blanket, for warm water. The girl's name was Hannah Wexler, youngest child of Isaiah and Rebecca Wexler. Their house had been the 3rd on the coast road. Prudence rubbed her feet for 20 minutes to get the color back. Silas held a cup of warm water to her lips. She drank, choked, drank again. Adelaide knelt in front of her. Hannah! The girl's eyes came up, gray, very large, very steady. Where are your mother and father, Hannah? The girl swallowed. They said, yes. They said run to the Thornbury place. Yes. They said the lady there would open the door. Yes. They said they were too tired to come. Silence. They said the lady would help me. They said the lady was. Hannah stopped. Her small face crumpled. They said the lady was the only one who would. Adelaide's throat closed. She put her hand on Hannah's small cold cheek. Your mother and father were right, Hannah. Are they coming? Adelaide looked at Prudence. Prudence looked at Adelaide. Neither answered. Hannah understood without an answer. Her small mouth opened. She made a sound. Not a cry. Something worse than a cry. The sound a child makes when the world has just changed shape, and she has no words yet for the new shape. Adelaide pulled her against her chest, held her. They loved you, Hannah. You listen to me now. They loved you very much. They were brave. They were the bravest people in this whole village. They sent you here because they trusted me with the thing they loved most in the world. Do you hear me? Hannah pressed her face into Adelaide's shoulder. They must have loved you so much, sweet girl. Cora came over, small, silent, sat down on the floor beside them, did not say a word, took Hannah's small hand in her small hand, and did not let go. Hannah did not let go either. They sat there a long time, Adelaide holding one child, Cora holding the other, Prudence, one hand pressed over her mouth, weeping without sound. Silas, at the top of the stairs, standing with his back to them, because he could not bear to look. By nightfall of the second day, 84 people. The storm had not broken. The storm had gotten worse. Adelaide sat by the door. Silas had gone down to sleep for 2 hours. She had made him. She was thinking, half dreaming, of Ezra, of the way he had waved once, from the dock and never turned back, of the way Nathaniel's handwriting had slanted on that folded piece of paper. I meant it, even if I could not keep it. She had kept it for him. The knock came, not a knock, a single weak scrape, like a hand that no longer had the strength to close into a fist. She stood, slow, her back cracking, lifted the bar, opened the door. Reverend Caleb Merriweather stood on the threshold, alone. No coat, his fine black coat was gone. Shirt sleeves, hair frozen to his skull, blood on his forehead, from a cut she could not see the edge of. Not shivering, which meant he was past shivering, which meant he had maybe an hour before his body stopped. He looked at her. She looked at him. He did not kneel. He did not weep. He said, in a voice that had almost nothing left in it, I did not come here for my life. She waited. I came here to ask your forgiveness. She waited. I do not deserve it. I will not ask twice. The wind pulled at the door in her hand, her fingers going numb on the wood. Behind her, at the bottom of the stairs, she heard Prudence's voice. Sharp. Mother. Mother, do not. Mother, close the door. Prudence had come up. Second step from the top. Her face white with fury. He killed the Wexlers, Mother. He went house to house at the start of the storm. Silas told me. He went and he told them not to come here. He said better to die in the house of God than live in the cellar of a madwoman. Mother, he killed them. Adelaide stood in the doorway, her hand on the wood, the wind pulling. Behind her, 70 pairs of eyes. The whole chamber had gone silent. They had all heard Prudence. They were all looking up the stairs at the widow in the doorway and the ruined man on the threshold. Adelaide looked at Caleb Merriweather, at the man who had called her cellar a tomb, at the man who had preached against her, at the man who had refused her $6 for medicine, at the man who had walked from house to house through the first hours of a storm telling frightened people to stay put and die. She looked at his frozen hair, at the cut on his forehead, at his shirt sleeves, at his empty hands. She thought of Hannah Wexler downstairs, 6 years old, holding Cora's hand. Both of her parents dead because of the man in front of her. She thought very clearly, I could close this door. I could close it and drop the bar and go down the stairs and it would be done. Nobody in this chamber would blame me. She thought all of it in the space of one breath. Then she thought one more thing. She thought about the woman she would be tomorrow if she closed this door. She thought about the grandmother Cordelia Thornbury would grow up with if she closed this door. She saw very clearly 2 doors. One was the door in her hand. The other was the door that would open in her own chest for the rest of her life, if she chose wrongly here. She did not choose for him. She chose for herself. She stepped aside. Merriweather did not move. He stared at her. His mouth opened. Nothing came out. She said, quietly, Come in, Caleb. His first name. She had never called him by his first name in 5 years. He walked past her, very slowly, legs almost giving. Silas Barrow, who had come up behind Prudence, caught the Reverend at the second step and lowered him to sitting. Prudence stood very still on the stair, her hand over her mouth. Adelaide closed the door, dropped the bar. turned, looked at her daughter-in-law, said, in a voice she made steady, with all the strength she had left, "He will sleep at the top of the stairs. If any other soul comes tonight, he will be the first to hear the knock. He will come and wake me, and he will help me open the door. That is what he is here to do." Prudence stared at her. Her face did something complicated. Anger, confusion, grief, and under all of it something else. Something Prudence would not name for years afterward. She nodded once, went back down the stairs. Adelaide followed the Reverend down. Sat him on a bench, put a blanket over him, put a cup of hot water in his hands. Did not speak. He did not speak either. He drank the water. He looked at the floor. He would not look at her. He would not look at anyone. Prudence went into labor at midnight. The baby was early. Had been early, since Elias had died in November. Since the stress and the winter and the everything. Since the run, through the yard with Cora in her arms. The first pain doubled her over. Adelaide was at her side in a heartbeat. "Prue, now. How far apart?" "I don't know. This one. Now." Adelaide stood, raised her voice. Not a shout. A tone. "I need the alcove cleared. Blankets. 2 lamps. Hot water. Now." 6 women were on their feet before she finished. The alcove, the small side chamber, where blankets were stored, was empty in 90 seconds. 2 lamps hung. Blankets on the floor. A kettle brought from the stove. They moved Prudence in. Adelaide knelt at her side. Ruth Ashby knelt on the other side. Silently, without asking, she took Prudence's hand. Prudence looked at her. Ruth looked back. Neither said a word. Ruth did not let go. The women hung a blanket across the doorway. Outside the blanket, the chamber went quieter than it had been in 2 days. 84 people, waiting, not one speaking above a whisper. Old men holding grandchildren. Mothers rocking children they had thought they would never rock again. Caleb Merriweather sitting where Adelaide had put him, at the foot of the stairs, alone, hands folded, head down, listening. Cora sat on Temperance Gale's lap. Hannah Wexler sat on Cora's lap. 3 of them in one small huddle by the stove. Cora whispered to Hannah, "That is my mother in there. Yes. She is having a baby. Yes. You will be an aunt. Almost." Hannah considered. "Almost. Because you are our sister now. So." Hannah thought about it, then leaned her head against Cora's shoulder. "Okay." Cora patted her hair. "Okay." Inside the alcove, Prudence pushed. She had been in labor 5 hours. She was tired. She was frightened. She was doing it in a stone chamber under 12 feet of snow, with 83 strangers on the other side of a blanket. But she was not alone. She had Adelaide's rough hand on her forehead. She had Ruth Ashby's small, strong hand crushed in her right hand. She had 2 lamps and clean blankets and hot water, and a mother-in-law who had delivered 2 of her own babies, and half the babies in Stonebrook. The baby came at 4 in the morning. A boy, small, loud, furious. Adelaide caught him in a clean blanket. Held him up, looked at his small red screaming face, looked at Prudence. "He is here." Prudence was crying, held out her arms. Adelaide laid the baby against his mother's chest. The baby stopped crying almost at once, snuffled, opened his eyes, closed them, found his mother's warmth, slept. "His name. You choose." "Samuel." Adelaide's breath caught. "Samuel Frostwood." "Say the name, mother." Adelaide said it, slowly, the way you say a name you have not said out loud in years. The way a widow says the name of the man she has never stopped loving. "Samuel. For his grandfather he never met." "Yes, my love. For Ezra." "Yes." Adelaide bent down, kissed her grandson on the top of his small warm head, kissed her daughter-in-law on the forehead, stood up, turned to Ruth Ashby. Ruth, whose name had been on the paper. Ruth, whose husband was dead in the ruined storeroom half a mile away. Ruth, whose hand Prudence had held for 5 hours. Adelaide took Ruth's hand. Thank you, Ruth. Ruth's face broke. Della e. Thank you, Ruth. Ruth wept. Adelaide did not let go of her hand for a long moment. Then she pushed the blanket aside and stepped out into the main chamber. 83 faces turned toward her. She said quietly, "A boy. Both well." The chamber made a sound. Not a cheer. Something older than a cheer. The sound 83 people make together, when the thing they have been silently praying for happens, and they did not know until this moment that they had been praying. Cora slid off Temperance's lap, ran across the room, ducked under the blanket, climbed onto the pallet next to her mother, looked at the tiny red face, whispered, "Hello. Welcome to Boss Ark." The storm broke on the morning of March 14th, 1888. At 6 in the morning the wind was screaming. At 6:15 it dropped like a stone. By 7 the last flakes were falling in a still gray silence. By 8 the sun was up in a sky so blue it looked painted. Adelaide climbed the stairs. Caleb Merriweather was already awake at the top. He had not slept. He had sat by the door all night, as she had said, listening. No one else had come. He looked at her. She looked at him. Neither spoke. She lifted the bar. Together they pushed the door. It moved 6 inches. Snow. They pushed again. It moved another 6. Silas Barrow came up the stairs. Then 2 of the Marshall men. Then Ruth Ashby's grown nephew. 4 men and Adelaide put their shoulders to the door. It opened. Sunlight fell into the vestibule like a blessing. Adelaide climbed the last steps, stood on the surface. The world was gone. She had known Stonebrook her whole life. Every house, every fence line, every stump. And there was nothing. Snow. Drifts to the second-story windows of the houses still standing. Drifts higher than the church. Drifts where houses had been the day before yesterday and were not there now. Silence. Adelaide put her hand against her chest. The Reverend came up beside her. He said, quietly, "God have mercy." She said, "God had nothing to do with the ones who lived." He did not answer. He did not need to. They stood in the sunlight. They did not speak again. Behind and below them 88 people alive. Above them, in the drifts, and in the fields, and in the ruins, a number they would not know for 2 more weeks. 23 villagers dead in Stonebrook. Hundreds up and down the coast of New England. The great blizzard of 1888. The one that came in March. The one nobody had believed was possible. They rebuilt through the spring. Adelaide's shelter became a way station. Families whose houses were gone stayed there, while they built new ones. The Marshalls stayed 6 weeks. The Coopers 8. Hannah Wexler stayed forever. Prudence and Adelaide filed the papers to keep her, before summer was out, and no one in Stonebrook contested it. Not one voice. Caleb Merriweather came to Adelaide's door on the morning of the 4th day, after the storm. He had his hat in his hand. "Mrs. Thornbury, I have come to apologize." Adelaide looked at him a long moment. "I do not need your apology, Reverend. I need my well dug." She handed him a shovel. He took it. He dug. For 3 months he dug. Not just her well. Every well in the village that had collapsed. Every fence that had gone down. Every roof that needed shoring. He worked from first light to last. He did not preach. He did not go into the pulpit. At the end of the 3rd month, on a Sunday morning in June, he came to her door again. "I have written to the diocese. I am leaving." "Where?" "West. There is a mission. In the mountains. They need someone who has been what I have been." "Learned what, Caleb?" "That there are more kinds of holiness in this world than the kind I was taught to preach." She nodded once. He nodded back. He left the next morning. She did not see him again. 2 weeks later, a letter came from a coaching station in Pennsylvania. 1 page, careful handwriting. "Mrs. Thornbury, I want you to know that on the night of the storm, when you opened your door to me, you did not save my life. My life was already lost. What you gave me was worth much more than that. You taught me who God is. I did not know until I stood on your threshold, and you stepped aside. I will spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of the door you opened. C. Merriweather. Adelaide read the letter twice. Then she folded it, put it in the wooden box on her dresser, next to Nathaniel's promise about Cora's first steps. She never wrote back. She did not need to. The years passed quietly. Cora grew tall. Cora grew serious. At 10 she was the child who noticed if another child was cold and gave her own coat. At 15 she was reading Dr. Kettleworth's medical books at the kitchen table. At 17 she began riding with him on his rounds, learning what a country doctor knew. Samuel Frostwood grew broad and quiet like the father he had never met. At 12 he was apprenticing weekends with old Silas Barrow, still sharp-eyed at 72, learning to lay stone. Prudence's laundry business became a small mercy for 2 other widows in Stonebrook, who joined her at it and split the work. Temperance Gale came for tea every Wednesday afternoon and stayed until the light went. What had broken between her and Adelaide never fully mended. But it did not need to. There was enough left to sit with. Ruth Ashby's store slowly became the store where every mother in Stonebrook brought her children to meet Cora, because Cora, at 18, was the closest thing the village had to someone who understood what to do when a fever climbed. Adelaide Thornbury lived to be 66 years old. She died in her sleep on a snowy night in February of 1901. Cora was 18, home from her first year of nursing training in New Haven on winter break. She was in the bed with her grandmother when it happened. Holding one hand, Samuel, 13, was in the chair by the bed. Holding the other, Prudence, 41, grayer than her mother-in-law had been at that age, was standing at the foot of the bed, with her hands folded on the wooden footboard. Adelaide had not been sick. She had been tired. She had lain down at 8 in the evening and closed her eyes, and Cora had come in an hour later to bank the fire and had seen her grandmother's breathing and had known. She had called her mother. She had called Samuel. The 3 of them had sat with her for 3 hours. Adelaide had opened her eyes once. Late, almost midnight, she had looked at Cora. She had smiled. She had said, so quietly that Cora had to lean down to hear, "Bah!" Cora had said, "Yes, Bah." Adelaide had said, "You were the first thing that made me want to build." Cora could not speak. Adelaide had turned her head, slowly, looked at Samuel, said, "You were born in the ark, my boy." Samuel, at 13, was already almost a man. But he cried like a child. Adelaide had squeezed his hand. Then she had closed her eyes. She did not open them again. She died an hour later. Cora was still holding one hand. Samuel was still holding the other. The snow was still falling outside. They buried her on the hill above the harbor, next to the 3 coffins from 1883. The stone was simple the way she had wanted. Adelaide Thornbury, 1834. 1901 she built the door, and she opened it. That was all. That was all she wanted. The shelter is still there. The heavy oak doors have never been locked. Inside, the benches still line the walls. The stove still stands in the corner. And above the inner doorway, if you look up, you can still see a rough child's alphabet of small stones set into the lintel at odd angles, every one of them carried there by a small girl named Cordelia, when she was 3 and 4 and 5 years old. There is no plaque. There is no marker. Adelaide would not have one. The chamber speaks for itself. The way she always wanted things to speak, through the fact of what it is. Through the fact of 88 people who walked out of its doors on a bright blue morning in March of 1888, when hundreds of others up and down the New England coast did not. The villagers in the first year after the storm went on calling it what they had always called it, the tomb. Then slowly the name changed. By the summer of 1888 they were calling it something else. By the winter the new name was the only name anyone used. They called it the Ark of Salvation, because that is what it turned out to be all along. Not the place she was building to hide from the world. The place she was building to save it.